Discovering Alabama is a production of the Alabama Museum of Natural History.
This natural setting has long been a place of musical sounds. Perhaps the first performers were strange creatures serenading the depths of ancient seas that once prevailed. But the oceans eventually retreated, giving rise to a changing chorus. As millennia passed, the elements of nature worked to craft a unique amphitheater and the home for a more familiar symphony. Then it was man's turn to strike up the band. And these days, musicians performing here don't strike up the band, they crank it up. Long before our cities had built concert halls and civic centers, nature had constructed a theater of its own here in Northeast Alabama. I'm Doug Phillips. Join me for a look behind the scenes at a place called Horsepens 40, one of Alabama's first concert halls. This program is about a land unknown to many people. A land that in many ways has escaped the hustle and bustle of modern civilization. A place with bountiful backcountry, forests, streams, and wildlife more diverse than can be found in much of the inhabited world. Come along with me as we explore the natural wonders of this land. Come along as we discover Alabama. Welcome to Discovering Alabama. We're going to enjoy some of the festivities of Horsepens 40, but we're also going to look beyond the hoopla and the carrying on to visit the wonder of the place itself. Horsepens 40 is not your typical performing arts center. It's a unique outcropping of huge boulders on top of Chandler Mountain, Alabama's third highest mountain. With the many large rocks forming sort of a rough corral or pen, the site is an attraction in its own right. And as for bluegrass concerts and other events held up here, well, people come from all over the state, all over the country to enjoy the festivities.
We've been coming up here since the mid-'70s for the Bluegrass Festival. And it's good to get your family and your children out. And for a family outing, for a weekend camping trip, how can you beat it? You can see the people gathered all over the hillsides and the hollers and in the rocks and up in the fields picking. They'll be picking till daylight.
Chandler Mountain is a beautiful rural area located right about at the juncture of St. Clair, Blount, and Etowah counties. Although Horsepens 40 is a major attraction, the mountain itself is a fascinating place with interesting people and an interesting history.
If you don't know your past, you don't know just what to plan for the future. My ancestors, most of them, settled in the area around the Chandler Mountain area. The rock formations were such that they could fence the horses in very easily within the rocks, control them there. The stone boulders made the horse pens.
Well, Chandler Mountain is a place where you move back about 20 years in time. My first experience with it was in the early 1980s. We came up for a craft show at Horsepins 40 and pretty well fell in love with the place at that time, even though I swore I'd never come back after pulling the mountain and the truck running hot. But by the time the show was over, we had learned to love Chandler Mountain and Horsepins 40. We didn't understand what all these rows of crop were up here, and it was the next year before we found out it was all tomatoes. It is sort of the tomato capital of the Southeast, and especially Alabama. We love it here. We moved here 12 years ago and plan on staying the rest of our life. At night, I can walk out on my front porch and I can see one porch light if it happens to be on. The only thing we hear is the frogs and the crickets and the night sounds of the mountain.
Following the Creek Indian Wars of 1814, this area of Alabama was ceded to the U.S. government. But it wasn't until 1855 when the first white settler filed a homestead claim here on Chandler Mountain.
Chandler Mountain was named for the Chandler family, and the Chandlers were from Tennessee, and they came to St. Clair County sometime between 1810 and 1820, and they were the original settlers of that area, and it's, of course, who the mountain is named for. Because of the extreme location on Chandler Mountain, many of the people who lived there on top of the mountain did not have slaves and did not agree with many of the Southerners in their calls for the South, so many of them opted to not enter the war between the states. And because of that, many of them were able to use the unique rock formations as a sanctuary to hide out during the Civil War from people who was trying to enlist them. They would also use the rock formations to hide their horses during the day or at night, and thereby acquiring the name Horsepins 40.
They chose this mountain because of the privacy that they could endure here. We understand and that some people still have the sheepskin deed. One man still has a covered wagon that brought his family from North Georgia here. These people were farmers there and they're farmers here. They've tried peaches here. They've tried just about everything, and now they've settled on tomatoes. The climate, the soil is ideal for the tomato farming, and I look for it to be a major industry here for years to come.
Most people wouldn't expect to find a thriving agricultural center atop one of Alabama's highest mountains. The secret is a sandy, fertile soil and plenty of water. Good growing ground and abundant water atop a mountain, that's just part of Chandler Mountain's interesting geology.
This is the uppermost exposed formation, Paleozoic formation in Alabama. It's a Pottsville. It's Pennsylvanian in age, about 200 million years old. And it's very resistant sandstone, so it tops most of the mountains in this area. Essentially, the forces that are forming them stop. Then erosion takes over, and erosion like you see here, these are very hard sandstones and they're being eroded away through time.
Scientists tell us that millions of years ago, the entire Chandler Mountain area was underwater. And then something big happened. The Chandler Mountain area is part of the Appalachian Highlands. The Appalachians were pushed up by great pressures that occurred when continental plates collided eons ago.
About 240 million years ago, this was a delta in this area. These are a couple of fossils I picked up near here. These are corals, which are Mississippian in age and suggest that the area at the base of the mountain was very warm and clear water, and reefs and so forth were forming. There are no modern living examples of these, but these are typical corals. Here's a crinoid stem, which I picked up here the northern end of the mountain here. This was a animal, echinoid, that lived during the same period, again a marine animal. Here's a little blastoid, again, Mississippian. So all these give us a good idea or clue is that most of the formations underneath here were marine, going from shallow to deeper water.
1,000 years or more before the first white pioneers climbed its steep slopes, the Chandler Mountain area was already home to a thriving community, perhaps centered here at Horsepens. The mountain offered good soil, plenty of water, abundant game, and limited accessibility. Horsepens was a natural fortification, and overhangs like this provided natural shelter.
Here at Horsepens 40 and around Chandler Mountain, what we have are a different series of time periods represented. Things from the archaic, perhaps 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, and also from the woodland period, perhaps as long as 1,000 years ago. What we have are projectile points and pottery that was utilized on a regular basis all throughout this area. We also find lots of nutting stones in this region. They were used for extracting the resources from the environment, being able to take nuts and acorns, crush them, and extract the meal from the inside of the acorn.
In more recent centuries, this was the edge of Creek territory, and at times in possession of the Cherokee. For this reason and others, there was friction and fighting that you might say lasted until the 1990s. Finally, in 1996, the Creek and Cherokee signed a treaty here at Horsepens 40, ending the feuding once and for all.
The thing is the friendliness, people getting along together. There's no more of that hostile feelings, you know, and you want to carry a bow and arrow with your shotgun, you don't do that anymore. And it's great to feel that way, to feel free.
This is an effort to draw some attention to what is absolutely one of the outstanding natural resources we have here in Alabama. Certainly programs like yours and all contributes an awful lot to that, but there are an awful lot of people in this state that do not realize that we have these great attractions here.
The peace treaty is just one recent episode in Horsepens' captivating history. How did this place become such an attraction? How did it become Horsepens 40? That's a story that begins centuries ago.
Well, Horsepens 40 started thousands of years ago with the Native Americans living here and keeping their animals in these rock shelters. But how it really came to its name was during the Civil War. The people off the mountain brought their animals up here and put them in these rock formations. It was very easy to pin them up so that the Yankees wouldn't get them when they were traveling through, going to Atlanta or wherever. So therefore it got its name, Horsepens, and there's 40 acres of these rock formations.
In fact, when John Hyatt was the first white man to file on the property here, and he filed the lower 40, the farming 40, the lower 40 being where his home was, the farming 40 and the Horsepens 40.
I run into Dexter Hyatt. First time I saw Horsepens, he brought me down here, and I was awed by it, the critters and the plants. And here we had a bunch of natural fauna, plant life, and animals, and a real arena to put it in.
Taken together, the natural and the cultural history of Horsepens add up to quite an appeal. Of course, for our purposes today, the more prominent aspect of that appeal is the sculpted stone character, which you might think would be just the setting for that style of music known as hard rock. But think again. It was the descendants of John Hyatt that first brought tomato growing to Chandler Mountain, and in the 1950s it was the intrigue of mountain tomato farming that lured a young journalist named Warren Musgrove, who set the stage, so to speak, for an earlier style of music.
Bill Monroe, Doc Watson, many of them will tell you that they never got a better hand than right here. The atmosphere that was created. In fact, we got a place down there. I'm always been a little bit hard of hearing, but you could stand right down there in front of one of those rocks and bounce off, and I could hear you in front of the barn. So we didn't really need any sound system right to begin with. I remember Lester Flatt playing here. It was after he had already broke up with Earl Scruggs, and we had him as many times as we could. Emmylou Harris was 16, was a tender 16, and we got lucky to have her.
It was probably my first gig.
And she played, and I paid her with a bowl of fruit. And she's kidded me over the years about that.
It was a platter of fruit. My mother still has the ceramic platter. Warren, who was so great and so dedicated to keeping something beautiful and natural, and people sitting on bales of hay, and I think the stage was a door that somebody had raised up off the ground. But it was all done with a lot of love and commitment to doing something special, with not a lot of thought of making a lot of money, but just keeping something good, which is still works.
One reason that I think Warren Musgrove sold this facility or this area to the Smiths is he felt like they would take care of it and they would pass it on and always keep it natural like it is, rather than he had a number of people offer to buy this that wanted to put an amusement park here, like a Six Flags type thing, and certainly nothing wrong with Six Flags, we need that. But he wanted this to stay the natural beauty that it is, and that's what we need.
There's a lot of heritage here. There's a lot of good fun, family fun, and there's even with the bluegrass picking that's went on here for 20 years, there's a lot of tradition in itself, in the festival itself, and not only the traditional bluegrass, but traditional, the way the tradition has continued.
It's something that Betty and I both just love the place, and our goal is to preserve it and promote it to the point that where people can come here and enjoy themselves, bring their children.
We don't want to see a rock city or Gatlinburg. We want people to enjoy nature and the beauty of nature. I want my grandchildren to be able to walk out and see a tree, not just an asphalt jungle, which is what happens when you commercialize a place. And I think, and I truly hope, that Ron and Betty follow this philosophy that they have of no asphalt and leave things as they are. Let it be a little hard to walk across the ground. That's part of nature.
Now, it's not as though Horse Pens is without your conventional tourism attractions. For the track and field fans, for example, there's the Hillbilly Olympics, with events like the skillet toss and the tractor pull, where you pull the tractor. Me, I prefer a round or two of Chandler Mountain golf.
Let's go running barefoot through those tender grassy fields as we let our minds go running back in time. ourselves surrounded by those.
One of the things as you go through the trail, there's so many of the formations that take on different forms. Everybody that walks through there will come back and give us a new name. You know, Little Elephant Rock, Headless Hen Rock, Dinosaur Rock. Every time someone goes through there, they come out with, oh, I found a new rock, a new formation. There's nothing else like that in the Southeast, and it is a very unique experience.
And for some, a big part of the true attraction up here is when you pay very close attention and notice little microenvironments like this one on top of a rock where water has pooled, soil has built up, and now we find several types of mosses, a variety of ferns, yellow aster, and all up here together included with this beauty, the spiderwort. And the many interesting microenvironments here at Horse Pens are surrounded by one great macroenvironment of forest cover. Giant chestnut oaks, plentiful red oaks, and numerous big hickories. And sprinkled throughout are many of these beauties, wild hydrangea. This unique setting in nature and its unique appeal for people bring us to the question of how to balance use of the area with protection of the area, how to balance recreation with appreciation.
Well, Alabama's blessed with a rich cultural heritage. The Indians inhabited this place for thousands and thousands of years before the white man came along. We need to promote our heritage. We need to preserve our heritage. We need to be proud of it, and we need to make people aware of it. Horse Pens 40 is perfect for that. When Warren Musgrove came along, he had a wonderful idea of holding bluegrass festivals, preserving the cultural heritage of the mountain people that have been on Chandler Mountain for years. And so all of these things fit into our tourism recipe, if you will. Alabama is heavenly laden with wonderful seasoning. Horse Pens 40 is like the salt of that seasoning.
Some people may come to these areas for the simple recreation and not realize that it is an important area, an important part of Alabama's natural heritage. And we need to make sure that when people come to enjoy these areas, they don't come just to enjoy the entertainment or the event, but to enjoy their natural surroundings so that they do learn an appreciation for these areas.
If we don't do that, then our kids that are growing up, they have nowhere to go to find their heritage or to find their roots. And unless we instill these roots within our kids today, then tomorrow, how can they take care of something if they don't know anything about it?
Tourism is important to the area because, like myself, I depend on tourism in a way for a living by people buying my instruments such as this. And we enjoy the contact with the people, but we also enjoy our tranquility and peace that we share.
Sometimes it's difficult to strike the right balance for places like this. We all know about the people pressures and impacts to such national treasures as Yellowstone Park, Yosemite, and a number of other grand places. Presently, Alabama's natural attractions don't have the kinds of pressures that many other states are experiencing, at least not yet.
We need to survey what we have. We need to talk to the experts and find out what's necessary to preserve and maintain our heritage and our beautiful, fragile, scenic sites, and then put the plan in place.
I think some of the worst things that could happen to St. Clair County would be the type of growth that would occur without any thought or consideration to the environment or to the people who already live in the area and to the wildlife of the area.
As I said, Horse Pens brought us to this mountain, and we love the natural beauty of the place. Now, we love to see big crowds there during an event, but when the event's over, we like to see everybody go back home and leave the mountain to our sounds, our natural sounds.
Whether we're talking about tourism or any other aspect of promoting growth and development in our state, The key to striking the right balance is preparing for the future. And if we prepare, we can keep the problems to a minimum. Education, appreciation, foresight, and intelligent planning, these are our best hope for maintaining the wonderful heritage of our wonderful state. Thanks for joining us on this visit to a special part of Alabama's heritage. Please send any comments to this address.
This program is supported by grants from Legacy, Partners in Environmental Education, and the Alabama Wildlife Federation, working for wildlife since 1935.